Commander Sarah Chen stared at the navigation screen with growing worry. The numbers made no sense. According to their instruments, they had traveled over 2,000 light-years from Earth in what felt like minutes. That was impossible. Their test flight was supposed to jump them just outside the solar system, maybe 50 light-years at most. "Williams, run the navigation check again," she ordered her second-in-command. Lieutenant Tom Williams frowned at his console. "Ma'am, I've run it 6 times. Same result every time. We're definitely not in Kansas anymore." The bridge of the exploration. Ship Defiance buzzed with nervous energy. 24 crew members had volunteered for humanity's first faster-than-light test flight. They had expected to make history. They had not expected to get completely lost in space. "The drive worked," said Dr. Martinez from the engineering station. "It just worked too well. Something in the quantum field calculations must have been wrong." Sarah looked out at the stars through the main view screen. None of the constellations looked familiar. Earth's sun was nowhere to be seen. They were further from home than any human had ever been. "At least we're still alive," muttered Sergeant Jackson from the weapons console. "When they told us this was an experimental drive, I figured we had a 50-50 chance of turning into space dust." Before Sarah could respond, the ship's sensors started beeping frantically. Williams bent over his station, his face going pale. "Commander, we've got company, big company." The view screen shifted to show what their sensors had detected. Sarah felt her breath catch in her throat. Hundreds of ships filled the space around them. But these weren't human ships. The vessels were sleek and organic-looking, like someone had grown them instead of building them. Some were massive, easily 10 times the size of the Defiance. Others were small and fast, darting between the larger ships like angry wasps. "Are they fighting?" asked Dr. Martinez. "We're fighting," Williams corrected. "Look at the energy readings. They were in the middle of a huge battle when we showed up. Now they've all stopped." It was true, the alien ships had completely ceased their battle. Weapons that had been firing moments before went silent. The smaller ships stopped their attack runs. Even the massive dreadnoughts had turned away from each other. They were all pointing at the Defiance. "Well," said Sarah slowly, "I guess we just crashed their party." The silence on the bridge stretched for several seconds. Then Jackson laughed nervously. "Maybe they're just surprised to see us. You know, like when unexpected guests show up at dinner. Or maybe they're deciding which one of them gets to blow us up first," Williams added helpfully. Sarah made a decision. It might not be the smartest decision, but it felt right. "Open a communication channel on all frequencies." "Ma'am?" Williams looked uncertain. "If we're going to die out here, we might as well introduce ourselves first. Maybe they'll appreciate good manners." Williams shook his head but followed orders. The communication system crackled to life, broadcasting on every frequency their equipment could manage. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth ship Defiance," she said clearly. "We seem to have gotten a bit lost. We're not here to cause trouble. We were just testing our new drive system and ended up much further from home than we planned." For a moment, nothing happened. Then their communication system exploded with incoming signals. Dozens of different voices speaking in languages that sounded like nothing human ears had ever heard. The ship's computer tried to process it all, but the translation systems were completely overwhelmed. "They're all trying to talk at once," reported Williams. "The computer can't make sense of any of it." One voice cut through the chaos. It was speaking English, though with an odd accent that made every word sound like a question. "Human vessel? You claim to be from Earth? This name is not in our star charts. How did you arrive in hegemony space without detection? Your ship design is unfamiliar." Sarah felt a small surge of hope. At least one of them could communicate. "This is Commander Chen. We're from a planet called Earth, about 2,000 light-years from here if our navigation is correct. We didn't mean to enter anyone's territory. Our faster-than-light drive malfunctioned during a test flight." There was a pause. Then the voice came back, sounding even more confused. "You traveled 2,000 light-years? As a test? With a malfunctioning drive?" "Well, it wasn't supposed to malfunction," Sarah admitted. "But yes, this was our first attempt at faster-than-light travel." Another pause, longer this time. Sarah could hear what sounded like rapid conversation in the background, voices rising and falling in what might have been excitement or panic. "Commander Chen," the voice finally returned. "I am Diplomat Vexhai of the Hegemony Science Council. Your arrival has created what you might call a situation. Both fleets were engaged in a territorial dispute when you appeared. Your presence has caused all combat operations to cease." "Is that good or bad?" Sarah asked. "I am uncertain. Your ship appears to violate several fundamental laws of physics. Our sensors indicate your vessel is held together with what can only be described as controlled chaos. Yet you crossed vast distances that should have required months of careful preparation. How is this possible?" Dr. Martinez leaned over to Sarah's shoulder. "Maybe I should explain the technical details," he whispered. Sarah nodded and gestured for him to take the communication. "This is Dr. Martinez, our chief engineer. I can try to explain our technology." "Please do," said Vexhai. "Our scientists are most curious." Martinez cleared his throat. "Well, our FTL drive uses a quantum tunnel effect combined with space-time manipulation. We create a bubble around the ship that technically exists outside normal space. The math is pretty complicated, but basically we punch a hole in reality and hope we come out somewhere useful." The silence that followed was so long that Sarah wondered if they had lost the connection. "Dr. Martinez," Vexhai finally said, his voice sounding strained. "You punch a hole in reality and hope? This is your standard procedure?" "For experimental technology, yes," Martinez replied cheerfully. "We figure if it doesn't work, we'll learn something from the failure. If it does work, we'll learn something from the success. Either way, we make progress." More rapid background conversation could be heard over the channel. Sarah caught what sounded like several different voices all talking at once, though she couldn't understand the words. "Commander Chen," Vexhai said finally, "I must ask you to remain in your current position while we assess this situation. You have arrived at a most unusual time, in a most unusual manner with most unusual technology. The Hegemony Council must be informed immediately." "We're not going anywhere fast," Sarah replied. "Our navigation system is still trying to figure out where here actually is. That is probably for the best. Please stand by." The communication channel went quiet, leaving the crew of the Defiance alone with their thoughts and the sight of hundreds of alien warships surrounding them. "So," said Jackson after a moment, "anyone else notice that we just scared 2 entire alien fleets into stopping their war just by showing up?" "I noticed," Sarah said dryly. "I'm trying to decide if that's because they're impressed or because they think we're dangerous." "Why not both?" suggested Williams. Dr. Martinez was studying the alien ships through the sensors. "Their technology is incredible," he said with obvious admiration. "Look at these energy signatures. Their weapons could probably vaporize us in seconds. Their ships move like they're part organic. And their power systems are so efficient they barely register on our sensors. But they stopped fighting when they saw us," Sarah pointed out. "That has to mean something." "Maybe they've never seen anything as crazy as our ship before," Martinez continued. "I mean, by galactic standards, we're probably flying around in the equivalent of a cardboard box held together with duct tape and pure stubbornness." "Hey," protested Williams. "Our ship is perfectly functional, thank you very much." "Functional, yes. Sensible, no. Any reasonable species would have spent decades testing FTL technology before attempting a manned flight. We built one prototype and immediately took it for a joyride." Sarah considered this. It was true that humanity's approach to space exploration had always been a bit aggressive. While other species might have spent generations carefully planning their first steps into the galaxy, humans had a tendency to jump first and figure out the parachute on the way down. The communication system crackled back to life. "Commander Chen, this is Vexhai. The Council has reached a preliminary decision. You and your crew are to be escorted to the Hegemony capital for formal first contact proceedings. This is unprecedented. No new species has been discovered in over 3,000 years." "Discovered?" Sarah raised an eyebrow. "We're not lost cargo, Diplomat Vexhai. We're explorers." "Yes. Well, The distinction may be important for the formal proceedings. A escort fleet is being assembled. Please do not resist or attempt to flee. Sarah looked around at her crew. Williams shrugged. Martinez looked excited. Jackson was checking his weapon systems out of habit, though they all knew the Defiance's guns would be useless against the alien technology surrounding them. We won't cause any trouble, Sarah promised. But I have to ask, what exactly is the hegemony? The hegemony is the governing body for this region of the galaxy, HFY explained. We maintain peace and order among 47 different species, across thousands of star systems. We have existed for over 12,000 years. Williams whistled softly. 12,000 years of galactic civilization, and we just wandered into the middle of it by accident. It was not entirely an accident, Sarah reminded him. We were trying to test the FTL drive. We just tested it a little too well. Commander Chen, HFY continued, I must warn you that your arrival will cause considerable discussion among the Council. New species are rare. New species with impossible technology are unheard of. New species that accidentally travel vast distances while testing experimental drives are crazy, Sarah supplied. I was going to say unprecedented, but your term may be more accurate. Several sleek ships detached themselves from the larger fleets and moved to surround the Defiance. They were beautiful vessels, all smooth curves and elegant lines. Compared to them, the human ship looked exactly like what Martinez had said, a cardboard box held together with duct tape and stubbornness. Your escort is ready, HFY informed them. Please follow the lead ship. The journey to the capital will take approximately 6 standard hours. 6 hours? Dr. Martinez perked up with interest. How far is the capital? Roughly 40 light years from our current position. Martinez did some quick calculations in his head. That's incredibly fast. Your FTL technology must be remarkably efficient. It is standard hegemony technology, HFY replied, sounding puzzled. All member species have access to these capabilities. How fast does your drive operate? Sarah decided, to be honest. We're not entirely sure. This was our first test. Based on where we ended up, probably much faster than we intended. You tested an FTL drive without knowing its maximum speed? We knew the theoretical maximum speed, Martinez clarified. We just weren't sure if the theory would work in practice. Turns out the practice was a bit more exciting than the theory. The background voices over the communication channel erupted, again this time sounding distinctly alarmed. Dr. Martinez, HFY said slowly, are you telling me that you built and tested a faster-than-light drive based solely on theoretical calculations, without knowing if it would work or how fast it would take you? Pretty much, yes. And you volunteered to be the test subjects for this device? Of course, Sarah interjected. How else would we find out if it worked? The silence stretched so long that Sarah wondered if HFY had fainted. Commander Chen, he finally said, his voice sounding weak. I believe the Council is going to be very interested in meeting your species. As the Defiance followed its escort toward the hegemony capital, Sarah looked out at the alien ships surrounding them. Humanity had stumbled into a galactic civilization by accident, with technology that apparently defied all logic, piloted by a crew that thought testing experimental faster-than-light drives was just another Tuesday. She had a feeling their arrival was going to change things in ways none of them could imagine. Well, crew, she announced to the bridge, I guess we're about to become Earth's first official galactic diplomats. Think they have coffee wherever we're going? Asked Williams. Williams, Sarah replied with a grin. I think that's going to be the least of our problems. The hegemony capital was unlike anything the crew of the Defiance had ever imagined. The space station, if it could even be called that, was the size of a small moon, covered in gleaming spires and organic-looking structures that seemed to grow from the metal surface like crystal trees. Ships of dozens of different designs moved in carefully coordinated patterns around the station, each following traffic routes that looked more like art than engineering. It's beautiful, whispered Dr. Martinez as they approached the docking bay. Look at those energy patterns. The whole station is alive with controlled power flows. Commander Sarah Chen nodded, though she couldn't shake the feeling that they were flying their beat-up pickup truck into the parking lot of the galaxy's fanciest country club. The Defiance, with its patched hull and jury-rigged modifications, looked embarrassingly primitive next to the elegant alien vessels surrounding them. "Docking Bay 7 is being prepared for your arrival," announced VexHy over the communication channel. "Please follow the guide beams exactly. Our docking systems are designed for standard hegemony vessels. Your ship's unique specifications may require manual adjustment." "Unique is a polite way of putting it," muttered Lieutenant Williams as he struggled with the docking controls. The hegemony's guide beams were designed for ships with sophisticated automated systems. The Defiance, which relied heavily on manual piloting and what Martinez called mechanical intuition, required Williams to essentially fly by feel. After several tense minutes and what Sarah was sure were some very colorful alien curse words from the docking control tower, the Defiance settled into the bay with a loud clang that echoed through the station's hull. "Well," said Sergeant Jackson, "we're here in one piece. That's got to count for something." The docking bay was enormous, easily large enough to hold 50 ships the size of the Defiance. But it was clearly not designed with human physiology in mind. The atmospheric composition was close enough to Earth normal that they could breathe, but the gravity felt slightly off, and the lighting had an odd blue tint that made everything look like it was underwater. Sarah had decided to bring a small, diplomatic team. Herself, Dr. Martinez for technical questions, Williams as her second-in-command, and Jackson because she had a feeling they might need someone with military experience. The rest of the crew would remain on the ship, monitoring systems and trying to figure out how to repair their navigation equipment. The airlock cycled open to reveal their welcoming committee. Sarah's first thought was that she was looking at a collection of the galaxy's most successful costume designers. The beings waiting for them were unlike anything from Earth's wildest science fiction. VexHy turned out to be tall and thin, with pale blue skin and 4 arms that moved independently of each other. His head was elongated, with large eyes that seemed to see everything at once. He wore what looked like a robe made of liquid light that shifted colors as he moved. Beside him stood a being that looked like someone had crossed a bear with a tree. Thick bark-like skin covered a massive frame, and instead of hair, small branches grew from its head, complete with leaves that rustled when it moved. The third member of the committee was perhaps the most alien of all, a floating collection of crystalline structures that hummed with internal light. It had no obvious head or limbs, just geometric shapes that rotated slowly around a central core. "Welcome to Hegemony Central Station," VexHy said, stepping forward with all 4 arms, spread in what was probably meant as a friendly gesture. "I am Diplomat VexHy, as we have spoken. This is Engineer Groothan of the Sylvan Collective, and Data Core Prism Light of the Crystal Mines." Sarah stepped forward, trying to project confidence despite feeling completely out of her depth. "I'm Commander Sarah Chen. This is Dr. Martinez, our Chief Engineer, Lieutenant Williams, my second-in-command, and Sergeant Jackson, our security officer." Groothan made a sound like wind through leaves. The ship's translation system struggled for a moment before converting it to words. "Your species is remarkably uniform in appearance. Are you all from the same genetic line?" "No," Sarah replied, slightly confused. "We're all human, but we're not related. Why do you ask?" "Most species show greater physical variation," explained Prism Light, its voice sounding like chimes in a gentle breeze. "Your crew appears to have been selected for specific traits, Doctor." Martinez laughed. "Actually, we're volunteers who passed the physical and psychological tests for space travel. We're probably more similar than the general human population, because we all had to meet the same requirements. You volunteered for this mission?" VexHy's large eyes seemed to grow even larger. Knowing that it involved untested faster-than-light technology? "Of course," said Williams. "Someone had to test it. Might as well be people who were excited about the possibility." The 3 aliens exchanged what were probably meaningful looks, though Sarah couldn't read their expressions. "Perhaps we should proceed to the briefing room," VexHy suggested. "The Science Council is eager to hear about your technology and your motivations." The briefing room was another marvel of alien architecture. The walls seemed to be made of the same organic material as the station's exterior, with patterns that shifted and changed as they watched. Chairs, or at least structures that served the same purpose, had been hastily arranged to accommodate human anatomy. The Science Council consisted of representatives from a dozen different species, each more exotic than the last. Sarah found herself sitting across from beings that looked like living gems, mobile plants, graceful creatures that might have been descended from birds or fish, and others that defied easy classification. "Before we begin formal proceedings," announced a being that looked like a cross between an octopus and a flower, "we must understand the basic facts of your arrival. Dr. Martinez, please explain your faster-than-light technology." Martinez stood, up looking more excited than nervous. "Well, it's based on quantum tunneling theory combined with localized space-time manipulation. We create a field around the ship that essentially places it outside normal space-time. Then we calculate an exit, point and collapse the field. This theory is known to us," said one of the crystal beings. "However, the calculations required for safe implementation typically take several years to complete for each jump." "Oh, we don't do safe implementation," Martinez replied cheerfully. "We do rapid approximation with real-time correction. The computer calculates the most probable successful outcome and we go with that." The silence that followed was so complete that Sarah could hear the station's life support systems humming in the walls. "Most probable successful outcome," repeated HFY slowly. "Right. Usually around 60 to 70% chance of arriving where we intended. We figure that's good enough for experimental technology." "And the other 30 to 40%? asked Gruton. Martinez shrugged. "Well, that's how we ended up here instead of near Earth. The system worked, just not exactly as planned. You accepted a 30% chance of not arriving at your intended destination? Better than sitting on Earth wondering if the drive would work at all," said Williams. "Besides, getting lost in space is still better than being vaporized in space." Sarah watched the alien council members with growing fascination. They seemed to be having trouble processing the concept that humans would voluntarily accept such risks. "Let me understand this correctly," said the octopus flower being. "You built an experimental faster-than-light drive, calculated that it had only a moderate probability of working as intended, and then volunteered to test it personally." "That's about right," Sarah confirmed. "Why?" The question was so simple, yet Sarah realized she had never really thought about it before. "Because someone had to, and because we wanted to see what was out here." "But surely your species has established procedures for testing dangerous technologies? Remote probes? Automated systems? Computer simulations?" "We did some computer simulations," Martinez admitted, "but they only told us so much. At some point you have to build the real thing and see if it works." "What if it had killed you all?" Sarah considered this. "Then the next team would have learned from our mistakes and built a better version. The next team would have volunteered as well?" "Probably. Humans aren't very good at leaving mysteries unsolved." The crystalline being called prism light chimed softly. "This approach to technological development is unprecedented in our records. Most species advance through careful incremental improvements over thousands of years." "How long did it take your species to develop FTL technology?" asked Martinez with professional curiosity. "The hegemony developed standardized FTL approximately 8,000 years ago," replied HFY. "The project involved contributions from multiple species over several millennia." "Multiple species working for thousands of years," Martinez repeated. "Wow, we figured it out in about 50 years, working mostly by ourselves." 50 years? Gruton's leaves rustled with what might have been shock. "From theoretical conception to working prototype? Well, we're pretty motivated when we set our minds to something," Williams said. "Plus, we figured it was better to try and fail than never to try at all." "But the risks are part of the fun," Jackson interjected, speaking for the first time since they had arrived. "Look, I know you all have been doing things the safe way for thousands of years, and that's great. You've built an amazing civilization. But sometimes you need people crazy enough to take risks that sensible folks wouldn't take." "Crazy," repeated HFY thoughtfully. "It's not really crazy," Sarah clarified. "It's calculated risk-taking. We know what we're doing is dangerous. We plan for the dangers we can anticipate, and we're ready to improvise solutions for the ones we can't. Improvise? Make it up as we go along, Williams translated. Figure out solutions on the spot using whatever we have available. The council. Members looked at each other with what Sarah was beginning to recognize as a mixture of fascination and horror. Your species regularly makes decisions without complete information? Asked the octopus flower being. All the time, Sarah replied. We call it doing our best with what we've got. If we waited until we had complete information about everything, we'd never do anything at all. This explains much about your technology, observed Prismlight. Your ship's systems appear to be designed for rapid modification and repair under adverse conditions. That's the idea, Martinez confirmed. We built everything so it could be fixed with basic tools and spare parts. You never know when you're going to need to rebuild something from scratch. Your life support systems are particularly ingenious, added Gruthan. They appear to function through biological, mechanical, and electronic components working in harmony. Most species choose one approach and optimize it. You seem to have combined all three. We figured redundancy was important, Martinez said. If one system fails, the others can keep us alive long enough to fix it. And if multiple systems fail? Martinez grinned. Then we get creative. The meeting continued for several more hours. The aliens asked detailed questions about human culture, technology, and motivations. Sarah found herself explaining concepts that she had never had to put into words before. The human tendency to explore dangerous places just to see what was there. The way humans formed social bonds through shared risks. The almost instinctive human drive to push boundaries and test limits. In return, she learned about the hegemony itself. It was, as Vexhi had said, a 12,000-year-old galactic civilization that had achieved perfect stability through careful planning and risk elimination. Member species shared technology freely, conflicts were resolved through negotiation, and compromise and dangerous experimentation was carefully regulated to prevent accidents. It sounded wonderful. It also sounded incredibly boring to human sensibilities. The hegemony has not seen a major technological breakthrough in over 3,000 years, Prismlight admitted when Sarah asked about innovation. We have achieved optimal efficiency in all major areas of development. What about exploration? New territories? Unknown regions of space? The galaxy has been thoroughly mapped and catalogued, Vexhi replied. There are few mysteries remaining to be solved. Sarah searched for a diplomatic way to phrase her thoughts. That's very impressive. You've built a perfect civilization. Thank you, though I must note that your arrival has created something of a disruption. The Science Council has been debating your species classification for hours. Classification? All species in hegemony space are classified according to their technological development and social stability. This determines their level of participation in galactic affairs. And where do we fit? Vexhi's expression was unreadable. That is the problem. Your technology suggests a primitive development level. Your social organization appears chaotic and unpredictable, yet your capabilities exceed many advanced species. The Council is perplexed. Maybe that's not a bad thing, Sarah suggested. Maybe a little perplexity is healthy for a 12,000-year-old civilization. The Alien Council members considered this in silence. Finally, the octopus flower being spoke. Commander Chen, your species presents us with an unprecedented situation. We are not certain how to proceed. Well, Sarah said, settling back in her chair. Maybe we can figure it out together. Humans are pretty good at making things up as we go along. The aliens looked at each other again. Sarah was beginning to suspect that humanity's casual relationship with uncertainty was going to be the most alien thing about them. The emergency alert came just as Commander Sarah Chen was trying to figure out how to work the alien coffee machine in their assigned quarters. The machine looked like a work of art, all flowing lines and soft lights, but it had 17 different settings and all the labels were in languages she couldn't read. The wall screen flickered to life, showing Vexhi's elongated face twisted with what she was learning to recognize as anxiety. Commander Chen, Please report to the emergency council chamber immediately. We have a situation. Sarah abandoned the coffee machine and grabbed her communicator. Williams Martinez Jackson, emergency meeting in 5 minutes. Grab your gear. The emergency council chamber was chaos. Representatives from dozens of species filled the room, all talking at once in a babel of alien languages. The chamber's translation systems were struggling to keep up, creating a background hum of overlapping voices that made Sarah's head hurt. HFY met them at the entrance, his forearms moving in agitated gestures. Commander, the situation has become critical. We require your unique perspective. What's going on? Sarah asked, following him toward a massive display screen that dominated the center of the chamber. 3 hours ago, our monitoring stations detected massive energy surges from the Forbidden Zone, HFY explained. Ancient automated defense systems have activated after lying dormant for over 50,000 years. The display showed a star map with several systems highlighted in angry red. As Sarah watched, more systems flickered from blue to red, like lights going out across the galaxy. These defense systems were built by the ancients, continued HFY, a species that vanished long before the hegemony was established. They left behind automated guardians to protect their territory from invasion. And these guardians just woke up? Asked Dr. Martinez, studying the display with professional interest. Not exactly. They have been systematically attacking any ship that enters their territory for millennia, but now they appear to be expanding their operational parameters. The display zoomed in on one of the affected systems. Sarah could see dozens of small objects moving away from the central worlds, heading toward the hegemony border. They're spreading out, she observed. Yes. At their current rate of expansion, they will reach major hegemony populations within days. Our military commanders estimate that they could threaten the entire galactic core within months. Sarah looked around the chamber at the assembled aliens. Despite their exotic appearances, they all wore the same expression, barely controlled panic. What do these defense systems look like? Asked Sergeant Jackson, his military instincts kicking in. The display shifted to show sensor readings from the most recent encounters. The objects were roughly pyramid-shaped, about the size of a city block, and moved with impossible grace through space. Energy readings showed power levels that made Sarah whistle in appreciation. They're strong, she noted. Indeed. Each Guardian possesses firepower equivalent to a hegemony battlecruiser, along with defensive capabilities we do not fully understand. Worse, they appear to learn from each encounter. Tactics that worked against the first Guardians have proven useless against later ones. How many ships have you lost? Sarah asked quietly. 17 battle groups in the last 3 hours, admitted a new voice. Sarah turned to see a being that looked like a cross between a mantis and a knight in shining armor. I am Fleet Admiral Kextar. Our forces are inadequate to this task. What's been tried so far? Standard engagement protocols, Kextar replied. Concentrated firepower, coordinated assault patterns, electronic warfare systems. Nothing has been effective. The Guardians adapt too quickly. Sarah studied the tactical displays, noting the precise geometric patterns of the hegemony's attack formations. Everything was perfectly organized, elegantly coordinated, and completely predictable. Dr. Martinez, she said, what do you think? Martinez was examining the technical readouts with fascination. Their technology is incredible, but it's old, really old. These things have been running the same basic program for 50,000 years. So they're probably not designed to handle anything genuinely new. They adapt to variations on familiar themes, but something completely different might confuse them. Williams laughed. You're thinking what I'm thinking, aren't you? That this sounds like exactly the kind of problem humans are good at solving? Sarah nodded. HFY, has anyone tried anything unorthodox? Unorthodox. The diplomat looked confused. Random, unpredictable, completely insane by normal standards. Commander Chen, interrupted Fleet Admiral Kextar, we are not children playing games. This is a serious military crisis requiring serious military solutions. With respect, Admiral, Sarah replied, your serious military solutions aren't working. Sometimes you need people who don't know the rules. The rules exist for good reasons. Sure they do. But these Guardian things have had 50,000 years to learn all the rules. Maybe it's time to break a few. Vexhai held up all four hands for silence. Commander Chen, are you suggesting that you and your crew attempt what our entire military cannot accomplish? I'm suggesting we take a look, Sarah said. We're already lost in space with a half-broken ship and no way home. What's the worst that could happen? The silence that followed was profound. Then Kekstar made a sound that the translator rendered as bitter laughter. The worst that could happen is that you die uselessly while accomplishing nothing. Admiral, said Jackson mildly, you're talking to a crew that voluntarily tested an experimental FTL drive with a 30% chance of failure. Dying uselessly is just Tuesday for us. This is not a joke. Kekstar's voice rose to what was probably a shout in his species. No, Sarah agreed. It's not. But panic isn't going to solve anything either. Look, we're not claiming we can save the galaxy. We're just saying maybe a fresh perspective might help. A fresh perspective from a primitive species with impossible technology, muttered one of the other military representatives. Exactly, Sarah said cheerfully. We're too stupid to know what can't be done. Vexhai studied the humans for a long moment. What would you need? Access to all the technical data you have on these Guardians, detailed sensor readings, combat logs, everything, and we'd need permission to modify our ship's systems using hegemony technology. That would be highly irregular. Admiral, Sarah interrupted. With respect, your regular approach isn't working. Maybe irregular is what you need. The debate continued for another hour. Military representatives argued about protocol and procedure. Science Council members worried about the risks of giving advanced technology to an unknown species. Political leaders fretted about the precedent this would set. Finally, Vexhai called for silence. The decision is made. Commander Chen, you and your crew will be given access to all available information and resources. However, you will operate under strict oversight. Define strict oversight, Sarah said warily. I will accompany your mission, personally, along with technical advisors from the Science Council. Sarah considered this. Having alien observers would complicate things, but it was better than being refused entirely. Deal. But when we're in combat, my crew follows my orders. Without argument. No committee decisions when people are shooting at us. Agreed. 3 hours later, the Defiance looked like a completely different ship. Hegemony engineers had worked frantically to integrate advanced sensors, improved weapons, and better defensive systems into the human vessel. The result was something that no sane engineer from any species would have designed. A hybrid of cutting-edge alien technology and human jury-rigged practicality. It shouldn't work, muttered the Hegemony's chief engineer as they completed the modifications. The power coupling ratios are all wrong. The structural integrity is compromised. The system integration violates every basic principle of safe design. But does it work? Asked Martinez. Theoretically? No. In practice? The engineer made a sound that might have been resigned laughter. Probably yes. Your species appears to have a gift for making impossible things function through sheer determination. The crew was ready. Along with the original 24 humans, they now carried Vexhai, 2 technical advisors, and a military observer. The alien additions to the crew were nervous about the mission, but they were also curious. No one had ever seen humans in action before. The journey to the Forbidden Zone took 6 hours at maximum FTL speed. As they approached the border, Sarah could see why the area had earned its name. Space itself seemed different here, darker, emptier, filled with a sense of ancient menace. Guardian patrol detected, reported Williams from the sensor station. Range, 50,000 kilometers and closing. Just one? Asked Vexhai. Just one, it's big. The main screen lit up with an image of the approaching Guardian. It was beautiful in a terrifying way. A crystalline pyramid the size of a skyscraper, moving through space with impossible grace. Energy patterns flowed across its surface like living light. "It's scanning us," Martinez reported. "The energy patterns suggest it's trying to classify our threat level. What's it finding?" "Probably nothing it recognizes. Our ship doesn't match any known design patterns." The Guardian came to a stop about 10,000 kilometers away. For several minutes, nothing happened. "Is it just going to sit there?" asked Jackson. "Unknown," replied one of the technical advisors. "Previous encounters suggest it should have attacked by now." "Maybe it's confused," suggested Williams. As if responding to his words, the Guardian suddenly accelerated directly toward them. Sarah had less than a second to react. Evasive maneuvers. Full random pattern. What followed was unlike any space battle in recorded galactic history. Instead of the precise coordinated tactics that hegemony forces used, Sarah ordered her ship to move in completely unpredictable patterns. They rolled, spun, accelerated, decelerated, and changed direction with no apparent logic. The Guardian's weapons fired repeatedly, but each shot missed by wider and wider margins. The ancient AI was trying to calculate their movement pattern, but there was no pattern to calculate. "It can't predict what we're going to do," Martinez observed with delight, "because we don't know what we're going to do." "Return fire," Sarah ordered. "Target randomly, don't aim for anything specific." The Defiance's hybrid weapons systems opened up, firing at different parts of the Guardian with no tactical coordination. Most shots missed or bounced off the alien construct's shields, but a few got through, causing minor damage to seemingly random systems. "Commander," called HFY, his voice strained. "What is your strategy?" "We don't have a strategy," Sarah replied cheerfully as she threw the ship into another impossible turn. "That's the point." The battle continued for 20 minutes. The Guardian grew more and more erratic as its programming tried to adapt to an enemy that followed no discernible pattern. Finally, after one particularly wild maneuver that saw the Defiance fly directly between the Guardian's weapon emplacements while firing in all directions, the ancient construct simply stopped. It hung in space, its energy patterns flickering, uncertainly. "I think we broke it," Williams observed. "Not broke," Martinez corrected, studying his sensors. "Confused. Its combat systems are stuck in some kind of analysis loop. It can't figure out what we're trying to do." "That's because we're not trying to do anything," Sarah said. "We're just doing whatever feels right in the moment." The Guardian remained motionless for several more minutes. Then, to everyone's amazement, it began to withdraw. "It's leaving," breathed HFY. "Where's it going?" asked Jackson. Martinez checked his long-range sensors. "Back toward the core systems, and it's sending some kind of signal to the other Guardians." "What kind of signal?" "Unknown, but if I had to guess, I'd say it's telling them about us." Sarah settled back in her command chair, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Well, crew, I think we just introduced 50,000-year-old artificial intelligence to the concept of chaos theory." "Did we win?" asked one of the technical advisors. Sarah looked at the retreating Guardian, then at the shocked faces of her alien observers. "I'm not sure, but I think we just changed the rules of the game." The news of humanity's encounter with the ancient Guardians spread across the galaxy faster than their experimental FTL drive. Within hours of the Defiance's return to Hegemony Central Station, reports were flooding in from across the galaxy about similar encounters. The Guardians, it seemed, had suddenly become much less aggressive. Commander Sarah Chen found herself in the unusual position of being a galactic celebrity. The same aliens who had viewed humans as primitive curiosities now treated them with a mixture of awe and nervous respect. She wasn't entirely comfortable with either reaction. "Commander Chen," announced HFY as she entered what had become their regular briefing room, "you have been requested to address the full council." "The full council?" "Representatives from all 47 member species of the Hegemony," explained Dr. Martinez, who had been studying galactic politics in his spare time. "It hasn't convened in over 2,000 years." "What do they want?" HFY's forearms gestured in what she had learned meant uncertainty. "To understand what you did. To understand what it means. To understand you." Sarah rubbed her temples, feeling a headache coming on. HFY, we didn't do anything special. We just acted like humans. Yes, he replied. That appears to be the problem. The full council chamber was enormous. A sphere-shaped room with seating arranged in concentric rings that rose toward a domed ceiling. Representatives from 47 different species filled the seats, creating a visual spectacle that would have been overwhelming even without the political implications. Sarah stood at the center of the chamber, with her crew arranged behind her. The curved walls amplified every whisper, every movement, creating an acoustic environment that felt like standing inside a living organism. Commander Chen of the human species, announced a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. You stand before the full council of the hegemony to account for your actions in the forbidden zone. Account for our actions? Sarah looked up at the assembled representatives. We helped solve your guardian problem. Indeed. And in doing so, you have created a new problem. A holographic display materialized in the air above Sarah's head, showing star charts from across the galaxy. Red indicators marked dozens of systems. In the past 72 hours, continued the voice, we have received reports from 17 different sectors. Young members of various species have begun attempting to replicate human tactical approaches. 3 ships have been lost to creative maneuvering. 5 space stations have requested emergency engineering assistance after innovative modifications failed catastrophically. Sarah felt a sinking sensation in her stomach. Oh. Furthermore, several junior officers in the Hegemony Defense Force have formally requested permission to try random stuff and see what happens during combat exercises. Lieutenant Williams coughed to hide what was obviously laughter. Sarah shot him a warning look. The situation has become more complex, continued the voice. Your success against the Guardians has inspired what can only be described as copycat behavior among younger generations across multiple species. A new series of images appeared in the holographic display. These showed various aliens attempting what looked like human-style modifications to their equipment. Most of the results looked like expensive disasters. The hegemony has maintained galactic stability for 12,000 years through careful adherence to proven procedures, explained a representative who looked like a living tree. Your approach threatens to undermine the very foundations of our civilization. Our approach? Sarah looked around the chamber. We're just being ourselves. Yes, said another representative, this one resembling a collection of floating crystals. And being yourselves appears to involve a casual disregard for safety protocols, established procedures, and basic common sense. Dr. Martinez stepped forward. With respect, council members, maybe that's not entirely a bad thing. The chamber erupted in dozens of different sounds that the translation system rendered as various forms of outrage and shock. Dr. Martinez, said the tree being once the noise died down, are you suggesting that we abandon 12,000 years of social and technological progress? I'm suggesting that maybe perfect stability isn't the same thing as perfect health. Martinez replied. When was the last time your civilization made a major breakthrough in any field? Silence fell over the chamber. Sarah could hear the hum of life support systems and the distant sound of traffic in the station's corridors. Major breakthroughs are unnecessary, said a representative that looked like a cross between an octopus and a flower. We have achieved optimal efficiency in all areas of development. Have you? Asked Sergeant Jackson, speaking for the first time. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've achieved optimal stagnation. Sergeant, Sarah warned. No, Commander, I think. This needs to be said. Jackson looked up at the assembled representatives. You've built a perfect civilization where nothing changes, nothing fails, and nothing grows. That's not success, that's death by comfort. Our civilization has provided peace and prosperity for trillions of beings. And that's great, Jackson interrupted. But what happens when something comes along that your perfect systems can't handle? Like those Guardians? The Guardian situation was an anomaly. Was it? Or was it just the first time in thousands of years that you faced a problem that couldn't be solved by following the manual? Sarah watched the alien representatives carefully. She could see confusion, anger, and something that might have been fear in their alien faces. "Council members," she said, trying to regain control of the situation. "We're not trying to destroy your civilization. We're not even trying to change it, we're just being human." "And what does being human entail?" asked Vexai from his position in the diplomatic section. Sarah considered the question seriously. "It means we're not satisfied with good enough. It means we push boundaries even when we don't need to. It means we take risks because we're curious about what might happen. Even when those risks are dangerous, especially when they're dangerous. Safe risks aren't really risks at all." A new voice joined the conversation, younger sounding than most of the others. "Commander Chen, my name is Student Engineer Zixhar of the Quantum Builders. I have been studying your ship's modifications. The integration of disparate technologies should be impossible, yet it functions with remarkable efficiency." Sarah looked up toward the source of the voice and saw a being that looked like a cross between a spider and a clockwork mechanism. "Thank you." "It is not a compliment," Zixhar continued. "It is an observation. Your methods violate every principle of safe engineering, yet they work. How is this possible?" Dr. Martinez grinned. "Because we don't worry too much about whether something should work. We just try it and see if it does work. But the risks are manageable if you plan for them," Martinez continued. "We build redundancy into everything. We design for failure. We assume something will go wrong and we prepare to fix it when it does. This is not how engineering is typically practiced." "Maybe that's the problem," suggested Williams. "Maybe engineering should be an art instead of a science." The chamber fell silent again. Sarah could see the representatives looking at each other with expressions she was learning to interpret as confusion and concern. "Members of the council," she said, "may I ask you something?" "Proceed," said the tree being. "When was the last time any of you felt genuinely surprised? Not confused or alarmed? Surprised in a good way?" The silence stretched for nearly a minute. "I cannot recall," admitted the crystal being finally. "That's what we're offering," Sarah said. "Not chaos, not destruction, just the possibility of being surprised again." Over the following days, Sarah found herself in meeting after meeting with various hegemony officials. Each group had the same basic concerns. Humans were unpredictable. Humans were dangerous. Humans were inspiring other species to behave in unpredictable and dangerous ways. But gradually, a different pattern began to emerge. The younger representatives, those who had achieved their positions within the last few hundred years, were fascinated by human approaches. They asked detailed questions about human decision-making processes, human risk assessment, and human creativity. "The issue," explained Vexai during one of their private conversations, "is not that the council disapproves of your methods. The issue is that they are beginning to work." "Explain." 3 junior engineering teams have successfully solved long-standing technical problems using what they call human-style lateral thinking. A diplomatic mission to a neutral system achieved breakthrough results by abandoning formal protocols and simply talking to people like people. Even the military has reported improved training results when junior officers are allowed to improvise within reasonable parameters. Sarah settled back in her chair. "So we're accidentally starting a revolution." "A quiet one, but yes." "Is that bad?" Vexai considered this with all 4 arms moving in complex patterns. "Change is difficult for species that have existed in stability for thousands of years. But the results suggest that some change may be beneficial." "Some?" "Commander, yesterday a young scientist from the crystal mines requested permission to test a new theoretical framework for faster-than-light communication. When asked why existing methods were insufficient, she replied that she was curious to see what would happen if we tried something different." Sarah laughed. "That sounds like a perfectly reasonable scientific approach." "It is the first genuinely new research proposal the Science Council has received in over 800 years. "Oh, indeed. Your species appears to be infectious, in ways both alarming and potentially valuable." That evening, Sarah stood in the observation deck looking out at the Hegemony Station's magnificent architecture. Ships from dozens of different species moved in their careful, coordinated patterns. Everything was beautiful, efficient, and perfectly organized. It was also, she realized, completely predictable. Dr. Martinez joined her at the viewing window. "Penny, for your thoughts?" "I'm wondering if we've bitten off more than we can chew," she admitted. "We came out here to test an FTL drive. Now we're accidentally inspiring a galactic cultural revolution. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. Maybe. But revolutions have a way of getting out of hand." Martinez nodded, then pointed out at the traffic patterns. "See that ship there? The green one with the odd angle to its approach vector?" Sarah looked where he was pointing. One of the alien vessels was indeed taking a slightly different path than the others. Not dramatically different, but noticeably distinct from the standard pattern. "It's probably a minor navigation adjustment," she said. "Maybe, or maybe, it's someone who decided to take the scenic route just because they could." As they watched, another ship deviated slightly from the standard pattern, then another. "Martinez," Sarah said slowly, "I think we may have already changed things more than we realized. Is that good or bad?" Sarah thought about the question as she watched more ships begin to vary their approaches, creating new patterns that were less perfect but somehow more alive. "I guess we'll find out," she said finally. "That's the thing about change, you never know where it's going to lead until you get there." "Sounds very human." "Yeah," Sarah agreed, watching the slow dance of ships outside. "I think that might be the point." The crisis began 6 months after humanity's first contact with the hegemony. Commander Sarah Chen was in the middle of her morning coffee. She had finally figured out how to work the alien machine, when every communication system on the station started broadcasting emergency signals at once. "Commander Chen to Emergency Council immediately," came Vexhi's voice over the intercom, tight with what she had learned to recognize as barely controlled panic. "Priority Alpha. All departments." Sarah grabbed her gear and ran. She had seen the aliens handle various crises over the past months, but this was the first time she had heard genuine fear in their voices. The emergency council chamber was in chaos. Representatives from dozens of species filled the room, all talking at once. The main display showed a star map with red warning indicators spreading across entire sectors like an infection. "What's happening?" Sarah asked as she reached Vexhi's position. "The ancients have returned," he replied, his forearms moving in agitated patterns. "Not just their guardian systems, them, the actual creators of the defense networks." The display shifted to show deep space sensor readings. Sarah felt her breath catch. Massive structures were emerging from what had appeared to be empty space. Ships or stations so large they dwarfed entire moons. As she watched, more appeared, materializing as if they had been hiding just outside normal space. "How many?" she asked. 17 confirmed so far, with more appearing every hour. Each one is larger than our biggest space stations. Energy readings suggest technology far beyond current hegemony capabilities. Fleet Admiral Kextar appeared on the screen from his command ship. His usually pristine appearance was disheveled, and his voice carried the strain of sleepless hours. "The ancient fleet has issued an ultimatum. All contaminated systems must be evacuated or face purification." "Contaminated with what?" "Chaos," Vexhi replied quietly. "They claim the galaxy has been infected with chaotic thinking patterns that threaten the cosmic order. They intend to restore what they call proper harmony through systematic elimination of all unpredictable elements." Sarah stared at the display, a cold realization settling in her stomach. "They're talking about us, not just humans," said Dr. Martinez, who had arrived with the rest of the human crew. "They're talking about everyone who's been influenced by human approaches, every species that started thinking differently." "How long do we have?" "Unknown," Admiral Kextar replied. "They've given us what translates to approximately 7 of your days to begin evacuations. After that, they will commence what they call correction procedures." The chamber erupted in panicked discussion. Representatives from various species, argued about evacuation procedures, defensive strategies, and diplomatic solutions. Sarah listened to the chaos for several minutes before stepping forward. "May I suggest something?" she called out, her voice cutting through the noise. The chamber fell silent. All eyes, and optical sensors and energy patterns, focused on her. Has anyone tried talking to them directly? Not formal diplomatic channels, just talking? "Commander," said one of the military representatives, "these beings possessed galaxy-spanning technology when our species were still developing agriculture. They are not interested in conversation." "Maybe not formal conversation," Sarah agreed. "But every intelligence, no matter how advanced, makes assumptions. Maybe their assumptions are wrong. Their assumptions appear to be that chaos is a threat to galactic stability," observed Vexhai. "Right. But what if chaos isn't a threat? What if it's a feature, not a bug?" The alien representatives looked at each other with expressions that ranged from confusion to horror. "Commander Chen," said Admiral Kextar, "are you suggesting that we attempt to convince beings of vastly superior technology that their fundamental understanding of reality is incorrect? I'm suggesting we show them that their assumptions about chaos might be incomplete." Sarah looked around the chamber. "Think about it. They've been gone for 50,000 years. The galaxy they left behind was probably very different from the one they're seeing now." "Different how?" asked one of the Science Council members. "More diverse, more complex, more alive." Sarah gestured toward the assembled representatives. "Look around this chamber. 47 different species all working together, all bringing different perspectives to solve problems. That's not chaos. That's symphony." "A symphony they apparently wish to end," muttered someone from the back of the chamber. "Maybe because they don't understand the music." Lieutenant Williams stepped forward. "Commander, are you thinking what I think you're thinking?" Sarah nodded slowly. "I'm thinking we need to show them something they've never seen before. Such as controlled chaos, organized unpredictability, the beautiful complexity that emerges when different types of order interact and create something new." Dr. Martinez was studying the technical readings from the ancient fleet. "Their ships are incredible, pure geometric perfection, every line, every surface optimized for maximum efficiency. It's like they've reduced engineering to pure mathematics." "And mathematics is beautiful," Sarah agreed. "But it's not the only form of beauty." Over the next 3 days, Sarah found herself coordinating the strangest military operation in galactic history. Instead of preparing for battle, she was organizing what she called a demonstration of controlled chaos. The plan was simple in concept and terrifyingly complex in execution. Instead of fighting the ancients or running from them, they would show them what the galaxy had become in their absence. They would demonstrate the value of unpredictability, the strength that came from diversity, and the beauty that emerged from organized chaos. "This is insane," muttered Admiral Kextar as he reviewed the operational plans. "We're going to deploy every available ship in formation patterns that change randomly. We're going to broadcast cultural exchanges from all 47 species simultaneously. We're going to essentially throw the galaxy's biggest party in front of beings who could vaporize us all without effort." "That's the idea," Sarah confirmed. "We're going to show them that chaos doesn't mean destruction. It means creativity. And if they decide to destroy us anyway," Sarah shrugged, "then at least we'll go out doing something interesting." The day of the demonstration, Sarah stood on the bridge of the Defiance as it took its position in the most unusual fleet formation in galactic history. Thousands of ships from dozens of species had arranged themselves not in precise military formations, but in patterns that shifted and evolved like living things. "All ships report ready," announced Williams from the communications station. "Ancient fleet is approaching," added Martinez from sensors. "They're slowing down." Through the view screen, Sarah could see the approaching ancient vessels. They were magnificent, perfect geometric shapes that seemed to bend space around them. But they had indeed slowed their approach, as if curious about what they were seeing. "Begin the demonstration," Sarah ordered. What followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The assembled fleet began to move in patterns that were simultaneously chaotic and beautiful. Ships danced around each other in formations that changed moment by moment, creating three-dimensional mandalas of light and motion. At the same time, every communication frequency filled with broadcasts from the 47 species. Music, art, literature, scientific discoveries, philosophical discussions, a symphony of galactic civilization that had evolved over 12,000 years of peaceful cooperation. "The ancient fleet has stopped," reported Martinez. "They're scanning everything." "What are they finding?" "I'm not sure. The energy patterns suggest they're trying to analyze what they're seeing, but their systems don't seem equipped to process this much variation." For 2 hours, the demonstration continued. Ships wove patterns of impossible complexity while cultural transmissions filled space with the accumulated creativity of an entire galaxy. Sarah watched the ancient vessels carefully, looking for any sign of their reaction. "Commander," called HFY from his station. "We're receiving a transmission from the ancient flagship." "Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was unlike anything Sarah had ever heard, ancient beyond measure, yet somehow familiar. When it spoke, the words seemed to resonate not just in her ears, but in her mind. "Unknown fleet. Your behavior. Patterns do not match recorded chaos parameters. Please identify your organizational structure." Sarah took a breath and stepped forward. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of the human species. We don't have an organizational structure. We have something better. We have cooperation. Cooperation parameters require rigid hierarchical frameworks. Your formations demonstrate non-hierarchical complexity. This should not be possible." "A lot of things shouldn't be possible," Sarah replied. "That's what makes them interesting." There was a long pause. Then, "Define interesting." Sarah smiled. It was the first question any of them had asked that suggested curiosity, rather than judgment. Interesting means something that surprises you in a good way, something that makes you want to learn more, something that changes your understanding of what's possible. Surprise is a function of inadequate data processing. "No," Sarah disagreed gently. "Surprise is a function of encountering something genuinely new, something that doesn't fit your existing categories, something that makes you grow. Good unexpected or bad unexpected? Uncertain. Previous assumptions about optimal galactic organization appear to require revision." Dr. Martinez looked up from his sensor station with excitement. "Commander, I'm reading massive data exchanges. Within their fleet, they're reevaluating everything." "Commander Chen," the ancient voice continued, "your demonstration has provided data patterns not encountered in our previous analysis. We require additional time to process this information." "Take all the time you need," Sarah replied. "We're not going anywhere. This is acceptable. We will observe your species and associated civilizations for an extended period before determining appropriate actions. Observe all you want. But maybe you could also participate? Participate? Join the conversation. Add your knowledge to ours. Help us figure out what comes next." The silence that followed seemed to stretch forever. Then, slowly, one of the ancient vessels began to move. Not in attack formation, not in withdrawal, but in a graceful curve that brought it into the shifting patterns of the demonstration fleet. "Fascinating," came the ancient voice. "This form of organization generates complexity patterns previously thought impossible." "Welcome to the neighborhood," Sarah said with a grin. 6 months later, Sarah stood in the newly constructed integration center watching as representatives from the ancient collective worked alongside hegemony scientists and human engineers. The combination of ancient mathematical perfection, hegemony systematic organization, and human creative chaos was producing innovations that none of them could have achieved alone. "The final reports are in," announced HFY as he approached, her with a data pad. "The integration process has been more successful than anyone predicted." Define successful. Technological advancement has accelerated by approximately 4,000%. Cultural exchange programs have been established between previously incompatible species. And most significantly, The galaxy has begun exploring regions of space that were considered unreachable using previous methodologies. Sarah nodded, watching as a young ancient entity, if beings 50,000 years old could be called young, worked with a hegemony engineer to design what appeared to be a ship that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously. And the chaos levels? Managed chaos has increased by 300%. Vexhai replied with what she had learned was his version of a smile. Destructive chaos has decreased by 90%. It appears that when chaos is channeled constructively, it becomes a powerful force for positive change. Who would have thought? A new voice joined the conversation. Commander Chen? Sarah turned to see one of the ancient representatives approaching, a being of pure energy contained within a geometric framework that hurt to look at directly. Yes? I am Study Matrix Eternal Dawn. I have been assigned to analyze the integration of human approaches with existing galactic civilization. And what have you concluded? That your species possesses a unique gift for finding new solutions to old problems. However, this gift appears to be transferable to other species through exposure and practice. Sarah laughed. You make us sound like a beneficial infection. That is, not an inappropriate analogy. Your influence spreads through contact, improving the adaptive capabilities of affected populations. Is that good or bad? The ancient entity paused, its energy patterns shifting in what might have been thought. It is necessary. The galaxy has been stagnant for too long. New challenges require new approaches. Your species provides the catalyst for evolutionary advancement. So what happens now? Now, said Vexhai, we prepare for the next phase. Earth has successfully developed stable FTL technology. The first official diplomatic mission from your homeworld is expected to arrive within the month. Sarah felt a pang of homesickness mixed with pride. And then? Then we see what happens when an entire species of humans encounters galactic civilization, said Eternal Dawn. The possibilities are intriguing. Sarah looked out at the integration center, where beings from across the galaxy worked together, on projects that would have been impossible just months before. Ancient mathematics combined with hegemony engineering and human intuition was producing wonders she could barely comprehend. Well, she said finally, it should definitely be interesting. Indeed, agreed Vexhai, though I suspect that by now the galaxy is beginning to appreciate the value of interesting. As if to emphasize his point, a new alarm began sounding, not an emergency this time, but the signal indicating that another breakthrough had been achieved in one of the research centers. What now? Asked Sarah. Probably something impossible, Williams replied cheerfully as he joined the group. You know, Tuesday. Sarah laughed, looking out at the stars through the center's transparent walls. Humanity had stumbled into galactic civilization by accident, with broken technology and impossible attitudes. They hadn't conquered anyone or imposed their will on the galaxy. They had simply been themselves, chaotic, creative, stubborn, and endlessly curious. And somehow, that had been exactly what the galaxy needed. Commander, asked Eternal Dawn, what will your species do next? Sarah thought about the question, watching as more ships arrived carrying delegations from newly contacted civilizations, each bringing their own unique perspectives to add to the growing symphony of galactic cooperation. Honestly, she said, we'll probably wing it. The ancient entity's energy pattern shifted in what she was learning to recognize as amusement. I look forward to observing the results. So do we, Sarah replied. That's half the fun. Outside, the stars seemed brighter somehow, filled with possibilities that none of them could have imagined when a small human ship had accidentally stumbled into the galactic community. But that was the thing about chaos, Sarah reflected. You never knew where it would lead until you were willing to follow it wherever it wanted to go. And humanity, as always, was ready for the journey.